All right, welcome everyone to the October 2024 CLF Boston New England Reuse Group meeting. Michael is not joining us today because he has started his paternity leave early, so we're all sending a warm congratulations to his growing family. My name's Laurel Honzinski. I think most folks know I am the former co-chair with Michael of this group. I have since just very recently stepped down from that co-chair role, and Olivia Huang from Goody Clancy is going to be taking over, but she's not able to join at this time. So spoiler alert, we'll probably be looking for a updated recurring meeting time in the new year. So with that said, today we have Cord Jablonski and Andrew Thompson with Boston Building Resources here with us. So they're going to share a presentation. I think we have about 25 minutes, and then we'll have open Q&A and discussion. So with that, Andrew and Cord, I will let you all take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you for having us. It's great to be here. We're always excited to sort of share about what we do and explore ways that we can work together. So my name is Cord Jablonski. I'm the Executive Director of Boston Building Resources, and my colleague Andrew Thompson, Assistant Director of Partnerships, is with me. We operate a nonprofit 501c3 building material reuse center here in Boston, the Roxbury Crossing neighborhood, with the mission to inspire, educate, and empower homeowners to increase the efficiency and value of their homes. You'll notice reuse isn't in there, but it is really what we do. So we take in donated building materials that are resold mostly to low-income folks, and we'll get into a little bit more detail. But if you go to the next slide, please. When we do these things, this is kind of the spoiler alert here. People seem to care most about how much will it cost and how long will it take if you send things to us to be reused. So to kind of give you the punchline up front, we find it's typically, whether it's a residential setting or a commercial setting, reuse is often cheaper than disposal in most cases, and it tends to be neutral to project timelines. So with that, I will turn it over to Andrew, who'll give you a bit more detail about the program.
Thank you, Cord. So our building is around 9,000 square feet, which is pretty small for a building material reuse center. Quite small, actually, but we do our best to pump as much stuff through as we can. So we process and resell around $2 million a year worth of material. We offer an income qualified I should start by saying all of our prices are incredibly low. The goal for us is to get the stuff in the building, keep it out of the waste stream, and move it on to customers that want it or need it. To that end, we sell things at a steep discount. If you're income qualified, you get a steeper discount. We call this Plus membership, and that's around 70% of our customers. We sort of routinely sell to individuals, contractors, both residential and commercial, and we funnel a lot of what we get to other nonprofits that can make good use of it. Like I said, 8,800 square foot building, zero carbon building, refinished in spring 2021. Lovely solar panel array, good climate control, nice place to be. One fun point of history. So the reuse center has been here since about 1993 on this particular patch of land. And before the reuse center was built, where we sit now had some dumpsters on it, where folks began Boston's residential recycling program. So Cord and I sort of often like to talk about this story because what we're doing here, building material reuse, feels new to people. It feels sort of time consuming. It's a different process, and it can be kind of a challenge to get folks interested in giving it a go. And I think that was probably how people felt in about 1991 about residential recycling, right? I have to sort bottles and cans and paper. This is a pain. What's happening? And now it's like we pay for it with our property taxes. It's a thing that we all don't think about very much. I chuck it in a couple different cans and it goes somewhere for someone to deal with, ideally in a thoughtful manner. So we love to imagine a world in which material reuse becomes something as intuitive and easy and easily understood as residential bottles and cans recycling. In addition to our sales at the Reuse Center, we run a ton of educational workshops. We sort of have a dual goal here of wanting to provide folks the things they need, but also teaching them how to do the work themselves, if that's something they're interested in doing. Our workshops are quite affordable. They run a whole range from basic sort of home improvement stuff, sheetrock and taping a wall, window trim, hanging a door, kitchen design, understanding a heating system, a lot of cool stuff. They're often quite popular and sell out pretty quick. We sell, broadly speaking, anything you would expect to find in a major sort of home repair retailer, a Home Depot or something like that. These are some of our major product categories. We have an awful lot of windows and doors, a few hundred of each, lighting, plumbing, kitchen cabinets, appliances. We sell a wide range of stuff. I tried to explain this to high schoolers once and was stumbling over my words, and one of them said, "Oh, it's like a Goodwill Home Depot." And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a Goodwill Home Depot." So that's our succinct little soundbite there. So aside from the wonderful things we do, this is often a pretty time-consuming, expensive, and laborious endeavor. You guys deal with this stuff all the time. Building materials are heavy, they are bulky, they are often given to us in a state in which they require some effort to be saleable. We have to go get them, we have to sort them, we have to price them. So being a nonprofit, we're sort of intentionally selling things at a low price so they can get to the folks that need them. We manage about 70% of our budget through sales of goods at the counter, and we fundraise the other 30%. We receive an awful lot of donations in all sorts of different states. This is a fun slide we like, where the donation on the left there is like best case scenario. Folks take the time to wrap it up. This is from a retail partner we work with all the time. They give us extras from their warehouse. It's lovely, it's thoughtful, it's easy for our staff to work with. Donations on the right happen more often than we would care for. We try to set ourselves up to be able to deal with them as well. But like the previous slide says, all of this is expensive and takes time. So we are often limited in what we can take by the condition in which it is presented to us. What do we take? More or less anything we think we can sell. To the couple slides back, we have to fundraise 30% of our budget. So if someone presents me with something that I think I can sell on for a little bit of cash, I'm going to try and take a chance on it. And what does that mean exactly? It is really quite broad. I took a look at our donations from today, and just today we received a kitchen cabinet set, about 6 appliances, some unused carpet tiles, some antique tools, some plumbing fittings, a commercial gas meter, some light fixtures, some ceramic tiles, some paper dispensers for bathrooms, and a leftover pile of lumber from a shed project. So this came from a residential contractor, a commercial contractor, and a homeowner. So our donations come from all over the place, all sorts of interesting stuff. Often donations from the commercial sphere are particularly appealing. The product tends to be quite lightly used. Often it's leftovers from big projects or things that were kept in attic stock for a long time. Stuff that we can take in and deal without a ton of processing time is particularly appealing.
Yeah, and we wanted to talk a little bit about sort of how we, this group can all work together to advance this work of building an economy for reused building materials. And if we think about just supply and demand, I mean, the supply for used building materials is absolutely endless. You see it in the residential space, but increasingly in the commercial space, both because of the size of the projects, but as owner awareness is growing around issues of embodied carbon, the environmental impact. The challenge we have is demand, particularly in the commercial space, is not always there, right? There are some of the known issues that we've all talked about before of storage space and project timelines. But I think there's an opportunity, particularly for this group that interfaces with building owners and project owners, to perhaps work on that and over time begin to build more of an appetite. And if we go to the next slide, to that end, I think just to be sort of blatant about it, there is this thing, and when I Googled it, I was surprised. I was looking for a good picture that represented shiny object syndrome, and I learned that this is really a thing that people get diagnosed with. And we're currently working on a project to take several hundred desks and chairs and other furnishings out of office space that's getting redone here in the city. And it's 500 desks and chairs, many of which have never been sat in, super lightly used. They're a couple of years old. And these things would go into the waste stream most likely if we did not take them. The challenge we have in rehoming that is, they're 3 years old and they're not brand new. So, as there is a shift, as you all know, commercial space to have, even Class A space be even more over the top to inspire people to come back to the office. There's just not a ton of appetite for things that are not brand new, even if they're lightly used. And these desks and chairs would be something that we might sell for $150. It would represent a $1,500 line item if they were purchased new. So even if you think about storage costs and the hassles to move, it would be an economically sensible choice in any paradigm to buy used. But project owners, decision makers are not exactly there yet, right? As you all. So I think, how collectively do we move that? One way is to normalize and to ascribe a clearer value to reuse, right? Through educating people who are making decisions about what they want their spaces to be. And then the other would be policy that, drives adoption, right? And if we go to the next slide, to that end, on the education front, I mean, these may be familiar pictures to most of you, but I thought, helpful to share again in the context of this question at scale. This is Champion City Recovery in Brockton, and the middle picture shows my little trailer on the back of my little car, where I dumped some building materials from a project I was doing. And this is one of, I think, 7 or 8 similar facilities in the Boston, greater Boston area. And there are 8 truck bays there that are full all day, every day, with tractor trailers, shoveling out materials that are then loaded into rail cars. I don't know. I mean, you all would know, and I'm sort of interested to hear from you. To what extent is the reality of this circumstance understood by project owners, right? And I know, so we have the nonprofit 501c3. We also have a related sister organization that's a building materials cooperative that sells new kitchen cabinetry. And I've learned from experience, when I explain to someone who's purchasing new kitchen cabinets that their cabinets are going to represent, a third to half of their carbon footprint for a year. People's heads kind of snap, and they say, "Oh my God, like, I drive an electric car and I don't eat very much meat and I try to ride my bicycle when I can. I had no idea getting new kitchen cabinetry is going to wipe out all of that good that I've been doing." And if we go to the next slide, this is, I think we all on this call know or are aware that C&D waste is moved out of state. So we've begun this project where we're putting Apple trackers in dumpsters of C&D waste. And so here is one that didn't actually travel very far, but it landed in Rensselaer, New York, near where I went to college, at a landfill that I remember from my time there, in an area from my time there. That's a disadvantaged neighborhood, and this landfill is sited next to a junior high school and a community playground. If you Google about it, you can see that residents have been trying to get this closed for some time. So I think this is also another vector of education for building owners, property owners, people who are redoing spaces, which is there's a cost in dollars, but also in terms of environmental impact and social cost to, choosing to have that new thing when there might be something that's sort of adequate. So, the bottom line kind of becomes how visible mending and for individuals has, like, kind of got a following and is a bit of a thing, and how collectively can we begin to create excitement and acceptance around reusing something in the commercial sphere. Next slide.
Lunch.
We like lunch. So we do an awful lot of lunch and learns where we have folks like yourselves in. So if you haven't come to visit, please do. Please bring a group of colleagues. we're always happy to have people in and explore ways that we've talked about here that we could work together, or ideas that you have. And so with that, I think we're ready to open it up to questions.
I have a lot of questions about this Apple, like AirTags and truckload.
Yes.
Can you share more, please?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, so we AirTags are pretty cheap, and we sort of got in our heads we want to see where this stuff goes. One of the unfortunate realities of our job is we don't wind up selling everything that we get in, and sometimes things break, so we do have to find a way to throw them away. So we have our own C&D dumpster that we sort of have to have unloaded every couple months. And we struggle with finding the right object in which to embed an AirTag. If they're sort of large enough to get crushed up and you lose the tag, if they're too small, they tend to fall out and get ignored, and then you lose the tag. But the one that wound up in Rensselaer was a sink. So I epoxied this AirTag into a porcelain sink and stuck it on top of the dumpster. And 36 hours later, it was out in Rensselaer. And so we think it's, we live in Boston. We don't look at piles of trash. We don't deal with active landfills. But there is an absolute reality that when we throw this stuff out, it goes somewhere. And often, or almost always, it's going far out of state in an energy intensive manner and being dumped next to a community that doesn't want it there and is not often able to get it taken away. So there is like a sort of an embedded equity issue in what happens to our trash. And I think that's all part of the narrative about why it's important to reuse as much as we can. I'm going to send out another one today, so I'll let you guys know where it goes.
We had one that went north, right, and was incinerated, we believe.
Yeah.
Land in Everett, right? That went into a dumpster, a random C&D dumpster on Huntington Ave. I dropped it in as I walked by.
Cameron, I have a question?
I did, yeah. Can people hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank goodness. I was so excited to see that you guys were the presenters. I saw somebody had toured your facility like some months ago, and I was like, oh, this looks so awesome. I got to get out there. So really nice to see you guys. I was curious, just coming from the contractor perspective, what kinds of materials are you guys getting from contractors, if any? Just so it can inform me better to know like what to be looking out for on job sites and getting people to save and salvage if possible.
Well, my friend, it is a range. There's sort of the low-hanging fruit, and then there is the very complicated stuff. The office furniture coming out of this job in Cambridge is wonderful, but that's not necessarily our bread and butter. We love building materials. So I find one of the things on commercial job sites that I see a ton of is like utility grade lumber, right? 2x4s for railings, sheet goods that get put down for temporary flooring, a lot of that kind of stuff. One thing we've run into a few times with contractors we work with is sort of a chain of custody problem where it can become complicated to figure out who owns the stuff and how does that come through a contractor to us. But there's a whole range of things that wind up as leftovers on job sites that are contractor related, like fasteners, lumber, ladders, tools, things that you don't necessarily want for the next job. All of that stuff is tremendously valuable to our customers. They will buy every stick of lumber we bring in here in about 15 minutes. So that's a great place to start. I think it helps get folks on the ground sort of interested in this idea of what the reuse is. You take a railing set apart, it's got a couple holes in it. You don't want to use it for a new one, but it's great for us. Up from there, right? There's like all the stuff, commercial carpet tiles, ceiling tiles, furniture, appliances.
Casework, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say that very astute observation on the fact that owners don't know where this stuff is going. I just had the pleasure of touring Resource Roxbury, my first time
Oh,
visiting
great.
a recycling facility. Unbelievable, not in a bad way, just the scale and the mass of what's going on. You'd never think that it's hard to imagine it until you put it into picture and see it in your real life. It's really, I feel like everybody should go see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we got an offer a couple weeks ago. I got a call from
Mm.
like a recycler down in Raynham, and the guy said, "I've got 40 tons of cementitious siding." He had two tractor trailers of cementitious siding dropped off by a lumberyard. It was like a color from 2 years ago that they didn't sell much of anymore, and they didn't think they'd be able to sell it, so they sent it to this place to just get shredded. And the guy thought, like, I can't do that, so he's been trying to sell it, trying to find things to do with it. And, to Cord's market problem and to our space problem, we are not in a position to take on 40 tons of cementitious siding without an immediate buyer, and there weren't any buyers immediately available. So this stuff went to waste, right? And to your point, man, like it's staggering when you look at some of these places, the amount of stuff that goes in there and doesn't come out again.
When you get a when you get a call like that and you weren't able to take it, obviously, because you're talking about a ton of space, I feel like there needs to be kind of like a phone chain, Randy and Jim from Select Demo aren't on right now, but I know they've been working on securing some warehouse space. So if you can't take it, is there the person you call next? Like, how do we make sure that, everybody is aware of that availability of that material, or if there is someone who does have the space to store it, right? I don't know the answer, or
Yeah,
if there's an answer right now, or Jacob, if
yeah.
you're
I mean,
to that, but
you're absolutely right. I mean, we do that in an ad hoc way now, but that is the opportunity, I think, right, is to have that be to be codified, and that's there's I've used the parallel in the past, about open space software, right, which was a whole industry that grew out of collaboration and cooperation. And the beauty of our situation is we're a nonprofit, right? So we have to do the fundraising to be able to remain viable. But it is a lot of fun to be in a position of we don't have to figure out how to make money on that cementitious siding. We can be focused on just making sure it ends up somewhere other than the waste stream. Um, the real challenge is usually storage. And even if there are opportunities for temporary storage, it would be helpful to us. So if anyone has thoughts on that, please reach out to us and let us know. We have a donation that's coming in of a truckload of windows that were ordered in the wrong color. So brand new Pella windows, lovely, but we don't have the space here. We need to figure out how we can absorb those, right? Either it'll be at our cost, uh, and at a premium cost to pay to store them temporarily. But if there were a mechanism to be able to site materials somewhere that could be sponsored either at the state or the municipal level, to say, okay, you can go park these things for a month while you work to find a buyer, because usually we're called late in the process. So I think that's just one other point to make about, is you're thinking about, could there be opportunities for reuse? Please don't hesitate to be in touch early, even if it doesn't pan out. But the sooner we're aware and we can begin to plan and think about space needs, um, the better.
I was just gonna sort of add on to that like, while you guys don't have room to store 40 tons of cementitious siding for a lot of commercial projects, like that's the scale of stuff that we need, right? If I'm working on a
Right.
multifamily project, I don't need 3 toilets. I need 400 toilets, and I don't need them now. I need them in 18 months, right? So it's like, how do you deal
So
with
yeah,
that
and
magnitude of challenge, right?
and I think there's an opportunity, right? It seems feasible in certain cases to be able to source the quantities, and I'd point to this desk, sort of this donation of very large desks, right? That the challenge typically comes when, like, we get called, we're going to take these things, they're going to need to go somewhere in 60 days. And then the potential buyer or the designer, like the project, there's some appetite for reuse, but maybe the storage and the moving costs aren't line itemed, or what those costs are that may in total be less than a new purchase, but different, it's too much of a change from the project that people aren't willing to take on that operational risk, right? And that's generally where the conversation stops, right? It's like, all right, we can get them to you. You're going to need to store. We can even help facilitate the storage, but somebody's going to need to pay to store them. You'll spend a lot less money in the long run, but then it kind of stops because people don't want to take that risk on, right?
I'd love to talk more about kind of the challenge that you posed around, like, how do we create this excitement and acceptance around reused materials? And Stephanie, so you joined, I know partway through, but I feel like maybe you have some good insight to share here too, like how I do feel like, especially in commercial and corporate, interior projects, which is the perspective I'm coming from, it can be hard. But also budget oftentimes is a huge driver. And so there's at least some opportunities, even if it's like a break room or, maybe not kind of the front of house space. But I'd love to hear, and I'm sorry I'm calling you out, Stephanie, but like I'd love to hear from you or anybody on the call, like what has been an effective strategy to get clients or to get owners to bite on the reused materials.
Yeah, definitely. I can chime in here. I actually have a recent example where I staged a home for a developer, real estate residential developer. This like was a large, over 7,000 square feet home that needed a lot of furniture. And while there was definitely a lot more opportunity to get more reused product in this home, my main challenge with them was just creating that mind shift and like change of opinion that we can definitely source like a reused daybed that is just sitting somewhere like, I don't know, on Facebook Marketplace, or even like it's gonna end up in a landfill, right? So in the beginning of this sourcing product for this project, there was a very strong like resistance to a lot of products that I showed and that I sourced, not like bought, but actually sourced for them and showed first, because essentially the budget is coming from this developer. So but at the end of the project, there was one concern of the developer that we didn't stage one of the rooms as a full-size bedroom. It was a smaller room, so they wanted to have a day bed, and that room was not staged. Where can you find a day bed, bedding, mattress in like 2 days? Nowhere. Like you can't really order that. It's not going to be easy to source. So like I talked through the process with them, but obviously started looking for used items. And I found this day bed, which was like super, like it was $400 for the day bed and the mattress and sort of like everything that we needed. We picked it up the next day. When they saw it in the home already like styled and everything, it was like, oh, like now I understand like what you're referring to, like, oh, that's right, like we can find things that are in good quality that can be reused. And then like the realtor of that listing ended up being like this Facebook Marketplace like hunter, which like for me was a very big win, because although we ended up purchasing a lot of things new, at the end of the project she was sending me stuff like, hey, look at what I found, like look at these chairs, maybe we like use this for another house that we're now planning on staging. And so it was a small win, I guess, but honestly, what I've seen is just like when you actually provide the example live and they experience it and they see the product and it's cheaper than what they expected and it's faster, it was like, okay, you've convinced me. So that's really the challenge that I face most of the time with developers or like residential clients.
Yeah, I think that that personal connection is like always what will get folks when you can make that personal connection.
And I think now using that example and really just like, I don't know, like announcing and promoting it, I feel is one way that we can definitely start the conversation. And that's like how the way I framed my efforts to this developer, because I was very conscious that they had no genuine interest in doing any, sustainable focused or, reused focused work, was budget. So it's just like reframing the conversation, right? Maybe this person is not really interested in sustainability, but they are interested in profitability, and this, they can coexist. Like sustainable efforts and profitability can coexist, just finding a way to frame it might be the most difficult part, but it definitely felt very rewarding to receive all these listings that she started sending me, like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at that. So that would be my 2 cents.
Cameron, you had a question or jump in?
I did, but I think Melissa put a question in the chat before me. I don't know if.
Oh yeah. I don't know if Melissa, if you wanted, I don't know if she can be on. Oh, there you are.
I
Ooh,
can. I'm
I
enjoying some sunlight and it's a little bright. So hi, yeah, there's an organization in Minnesota that they take in good quality used furniture, could be really, really old, but still good quality, and give it to people that are going from experiencing homelessness to, first-time homes and apartments and things like that. And I was at a conference last week where they're like, what do we do with the stuff that we reject? The person's trying to bring it to us. They maybe come in through office hours or something, or appointment hours, and then we have to turn them away. Where can we turn them to? And some of the other nonprofits have just as high of a standard. So I'm at a loss. And maybe some things just have to be thrown away.
I was gonna say it's tough. To Andrew's point, right? Like there are some things that we end up putting into a dumpster and that dumpster leaves because it was, broken when it got here. It was part of a larger donation, and it's unsaleable. This is in some ways, I think there's, a key component that's missing in a lot of this is the legislative mandate. So in Massachusetts, it's now illegal to throw out fabric. And so there are these business models that have cropped up, and there's a taker of last resort, right? So, if you're Goodwill or your Habitat or your any other or your Savers, which is a for-profit company, right? Like there's a place in an ecosystem in which you can shunt the things you don't want. We don't have that currently, and that ends up being like for us a real expense that we have to write a check for every month that we then have to go fundraise to offset. So we're excited about things like Birdo in the city of Boston. It's currently focused on operational carbon, but discussions that would move that to contemplate embodied carbon, I think, to Stephanie's point, start to shift a project owner's calculus around the economics change, right? Like, wow, I can throw these things out and buy new, and that's got one actual hard dollar cost, or I could zip my noggin open and decide to reuse some things, and that's got a much lower cost, right? And at the moment, there's the tax deduction is not in the lead points you might get for reuse. It's just not enough. But I should mention for anybody who's on this call that comes across furniture, if you don't know about household goods in Acton, it's similar organization to what Melissa mentions. They provide household goods for previously unhoused people who are becoming housed. So they'll take anything from pots and pans to couches, sofas, mattresses, even. So if you have those things, that's a great place to send them. Household goods in Acton. I'll stick it in the chat. And even better, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't familiar with that one. I mean, that your comment about like the taker of last resort, like I mean, like what's Goodwill gonna do with it? What's Savers gonna do with it if they can't get rid of it?
Yeah, I mean, if it's fabric now, they sell it to somebody who's going to shred it and use that feedstock, right, that they're going to sell downstream. And this is a little bit the challenge. I mean, we have in this group may have creative thoughts. You know, we're agnostic. I mean, we have the dual mission to help low income people in our immediate community, but in some ways, with the reuse lens on, we're also agnostic to where things go, right? So, like, if there's an opportunity to take that cementitious siding and stick it in a container and move it out of the country, that's great. And we have a lot of shoppers in the reuse center who do that on an individual basis. You know, they have a container sited at their house and they accumulate goods over time and they build schools in their homeland or they build community centers or health clinics. Got one gentleman who's on his third school in Ghana. So there is an appetite in other geographies that aren't subject to as stringent or any building codes or the legal system that we have here. So, you know, things can go to a place like Build Health International or IRN, but, you know, other partners who would move things out of the country where people can use them happily.
Cameron,
Wow,
I
there's a
think.
lot of hands up all of a sudden.
I know, I know.
Hooray!
Sorry, I lowered my hand thinking that no one's hand was going to go up, but I'll be quick, I promise. I had a question just about your business model and where you're seeing things going. The way I envision reuse and materials leaving, at least in a commercial setting, is purely downcycling, where say we have a big core shell project going up or some kind of lab science or office building, they have some carpet tile. And then of that carpet tile, maybe like however much is going to be landfilled. And so instead we send it to you guys. But then if that were the case, we can't then use it again for like another office building of the same size because we don't have enough, maybe for like a smaller interiors project. So I'm wondering where you see material reuse breaking into the commercial setting, if at all. Is heavy duty big commercial building just kind of not an area where you see materials going back into because it's more the producer rather than the area where it ends up?
It's a good point, and it's an excellent question. I mean, yeah, you're right in that the next use needs to be a smaller footprint or a smaller quantity, right? Just by definition. I mean, the good news on that is that that's a huge market, right? So like, as the buildings get smaller, there are more of them. But you know, I was driving through Boston, or I should say, I was sitting in traffic in Boston, you know, the other morning, and I was like, "Son of a turtle, this is going to go on forever because there are all of these buildings that are going up, and what's the design life of one of these buildings now? It's probably not what it was when things were built 100 years ago. So it's like it's going to be like painting the damn San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, right? Like we're going to get done, and then it's going to be time to reclad all of these things that just got clad, right? So, um, I would also say to your question, it's a problem we have to solve, right? Because the stream is just going to get bigger. Mickey?
Sorry, thank you. No, this is perfect. Lead into my question too, which is just the question of scaling up, right? And we've had conversations with Doors Unhinged, and like they like they operate in this like kind of like really interesting space where
Yeah.
it's like there's they're a trade partner or a subcontractor. So I was sort of wondering like what's your visibility to say people who are out there buying doors or I don't know, like one of the other pieces, maybe carpet is just like not the thing that we're ever going to be able to really recycle, and we're going to have to rely on manufacturer take back programs, or like there's got to be some other end of life situation to some products. But like the commodity things like conduit or junction boxes, like those are the kind of things that I would love to see. Like, okay, yeah, we can suitably pull that out of a commercial demo, and then you gotta find someplace to sell it. But is there a way that you guys can become active like in the typical bidding process? Like, are there subcontractors who know that you have this stuff available? So if there's a larger collection of people kind of in between, the
Yeah.
the reuse supply side and the construction side. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, one of the in jump in here, Andrew, like a lot of it gets back to this challenge of storage, and a lot of the grant funding that's available that's sort of bundled around recycling and reuse. It's very capital focused, right? So there's a ton of grant money that's capital focused, but reuse is really a labor intensive and more of a space intensive endeavor, right? It's not like we have a lot of machinery, we got a lot of people, and we need a place to put stuff to process it. A good example is a commercial contractor brought us several hundred, I guess they're called poke through devices, right, for connecting cabling and Cat5 into the floor, right? They're $1,000 or something a piece. They took the time to harvest these, very lightly used. We're like, great, we got all this product that's high value that we're going to sell. And then as we talked to architects and designers and builders, everybody says, no, I'm not touching that. Like, there's no way I can warrant an electrical device that came from you. So sorry, we'll just buy it new, right? And I think it's the combination of the space thing of where do you put it and park it, and is it an item that has the chain of custody question, where did it come from, and is it safe, gets caught up in the lawyers who say, rather than risk getting sued, we'll just pay the premium for new. Sorry, it's like the second deeply unsatisfying answer, but it's.
I mean, frankly, we couldn't even
tough.
get the electricians union to take them as like testing
Right.
devices. We tried to give them to the IBEW branch, like a local branch, to say like train your folks with these great devices, and they said no thanks.
Yeah.
Like the incentives are wacky. Like the cementitious siding was staggering because they bring it to this recycling facility, and those guys parked it because they were like, this is 2 flatbeds of stuff still in its wrapper with all its labels on it, never been touched. We got to find something practical to do with this. But they're incentivized to just squish that stuff into their pulverizing machinery because it spits out a product that they use that they sell to cap dead landfills in Massachusetts, right? So like stuff comes there that is brand new and perfectly reusable, but like their program is based on turning that stuff into something that sort of devalues whatever it was in the first place. It could be great if it could just be siding again, but now it's going to be dust.
I mean, to that end, when Andrew visited the siding, he learned. So we get a bunch of new product from a local big box retailer that's kind enough to donate things that haven't sold, right, or that we return. That same retailer, likely a different store, will send perfectly good wooden objects. So it could be lawn furniture, it could be, lumber that got returned to this processing facility to be chipped into feedstock. So they have quotas they need to meet for their grant funding, right, as a recycler. But the incentives broadly at the industry don't don't value reuse before recycle, right? And so I about fell off my chair when I learned like perfectly good lawn furniture is going into a chipper rather than coming here where we can sell it to somebody without a lot of money who's going to continue to use it as it was intended, right? Um, so it's, some of this gets me, like back to the need for just like broad education in the industry on like where does your trash actually go? Um, I see hands with Stephanie and Jacob.
I believe you're muted.
Thank you. So now that you mentioned this, I think definitely like policy change is another aspect that needs to be looked at specifically for reuse. That was actually what my question was about. I think you mentioned earlier something about either like tax incentive or some kinds of credit for reuse. Can you expand a little bit there if you know?
I mean that would be our dream. So Berto and I'll probably get this wrong because I'm a little bit out of my depth, but building energy reduction disclosure ordinance in the city of Boston requires people who own buildings over 20,000 square feet to disclose their emissions and then chart a path to net zero. And if they fall short of that path, those building owners can choose to pay an alternative compliance payment into a naughty fund, I'll call it, and that fund will pay out to nonprofits that are doing environmental justice work to lower carbon emissions, to lower carbon emissions in environmental justice communities within the city of Boston. Right? We applied for that grant and did not advance because our work is primarily focused on embodied carbon. So we sell some insulation and we sell some windows and we do some energy efficiency workshops, but the current ordinance structure just values operational carbon. It's anticipated that would become embodied carbon would become a thing, but in the absence of that or a similar state mandate, people look for the easiest and cheapest, right? Or the easiest. Jacob.
So I'm going back kind of a ways in our conversation to when we were talking about sort of disposal of last resort, end uses. And I had a conversation a while back with Lisa Goodwin Robbins, for those of you that know her. And we were at some conference where there was an insulation manufacturer that was taking, end of life carpet and recycling it into bad insulation, which, right, is like, great, it's not ending up in a landfill. And I asked Lisa, like, what's your take on it? And she said, oh, it's full of PFAS. Right. And that's a little bit removed from this conversation, in that we're talking about trying to reuse whole objects rather than repurpose them. But I think that some of the questions still stand, right? And it kind of came up in that question about like electrical devices of like, what is this really? But there was this whole conversation about like buildings aren't supposed to be waste receptacles, right? We shouldn't be taking toxic things from one building and putting them in another building. But also, we have all this stuff and we need a thing to do with it. And I have not, I don't know the solution. I don't have an answer, right? But it's this struggle of how do you balance that?
I think, for us at least, I think one of the great things about where we're positioned is that we, like all of this stuff we take in, we sort of prioritize it going to folks who have like immediate material needs, right? And there's a ton of literature and research about how home repair and keeping your home in repair and home maintenance and all these things are like quite underfunded. It's usually up to somebody's credit account or pocketbook, which most people can't afford. And it has direct impacts on people's physical health, people's mental health, community health, crime rates. Like it is a pile. So we get to have this conversation all the time. like those poke through devices might not have a great immediate use in someone's home, like who needs 15 electrical outlets and USB ports. But, you know, carpet tile, right? There might be enough of a quantity of carpet tile in a commercial project for us to realistically provide it to like 15 different homes to redo their floors, right? And it's not necessarily what I would choose if I had a brand new mortgage in a fancy home, but there's a lot of folks who are piecing things together all over this city and state. And so there's this real immediate benefit to keeping this stuff out of a waste stream. And it is a little bit of a down cycle for sure, right? But there's like folks need it. And the people that come into the store, man, like they are creative and they are excited about it. And they find all sorts of beautiful stuff to do with these things. They'll take 4 different kitchens and squish them together to make one really cool new kitchen. It's inspiring.
To that end, I should say to I think was sort of one of Cameron's early questions of what more specifically do we take. If you have projects that might come from a self-perform group or smaller projects, and there's the leftover attic stock from what you're replacing, like that is perfect for us. Please let us know. We'll send the truck. And that's actually something I don't think we talked about. We have a truck. We'll come get it. We have a crew that will
Every
come get
time.
it. We're there when we say we're going to be there. So,
It's
we're
free, it's
reliable.
easy.
Yeah. Easier than throwing it out.
Cheaper too.
I've been, that is something we typically try to, in our field verifications, try to see, is the countertop the right length? Like how old are the appliances, and kind of check them against your requirements list. I'm just thinking also about how obviously it depends on the project, if the project's right for it, but like how can we approach our project delivery process in a different way that would enable like, remove some of the barriers. So like, what do you have like, if I know that you're going to have sinks and, I don't have to detail what sink it is and how it connects with the counter and the faucet, like I just say it's a sink and it's coming from Boston Building Resources. And then I hold more time in CA to, address those details once that sink is like procured, right? And maybe I'm involved as a designer in the final procurement selection based on what's available. But like, I think that those are some of the ways, I almost wish we could have a whole other conversation, have you guys in about just how do we, from the design and specification and procurement side, how do we help like with that demand? That I feel like is one of the biggest pieces that we have to start to unlock.
I think that would be a great lunch topic, which we would
Yeah.
love to host for anybody who wants to come and talk about that. That feels like the critical thing, right? Like in the context of these desks that we're taking, if there's a way for the designer to say, instead of we're going to get you this exact desk in this excruciating detail, like we're giving you a 30 by 60-inch slab, it will go up and down, it will be from a high quality manufacturer, it will be one of these two colors. Like that's a thing that we can source for, and we could source for at scale and volume, to Jacob's question, right? As long as the parameters are broad enough, and they don't need to be completely wide open, right? But that feels like a critical sticking point. And then we can say, right, we can provide that desk at 15% of retail, so it becomes economic to line item some storage for it and some movers, right? And we pick up the lead points and everybody's happy. I wanted to, Janice had put in the chat the question of no sales tax on reused items, which is a fantastic suggestion I hadn't thought of before. So, and I don't know if Melissa's still on I believe it's in her home state. There are a couple of counties that provide grants to individual homeowners who want to use reused materials in projects. So you can apply for, it's like a $3,000 or $5,000 grant if I'm going to buy a used kitchen and I incur some extra costs in doing that. And so like no sales tax or similar incentives in the commercial space might be more of the carrot than the stick.
Yeah, we have one specific county that does offer that. Our biggest county, where Minneapolis is, Hennepin County, and I'm highly encouraging other counties to follow suit. So they've been offering deconstruction and structural move grants for quite a while, 3-4 years. But this year was the first year offering the
Let's get good too.
Yeah, I know.
conversation.
We lost you, Melissa, right at the
Oh,
this year, the first year offering the
the deconstruction structural move grants. Did you hear that part?
Yes.
structural.
Okay. Yeah, I shouldn't be working outside when I'm. Yeah. Anyway, sorry about all that. We have Hennepin County, where Minneapolis is, offering deconstruction and structural move grants, and they, for the first time this year, offer funding to buy used building materials. Their program has never sold out for the year, capped off for the year until this year. So there's been much more demand than supply. Being able
That's
to
great.
get a county to do something versus sales tax, which is obviously mostly a statewide issue. Obviously, there's local taxes too, but having another agency like our Department of Revenue to weigh in on that, that's a lot of conversations, multi-year kind of things. We would like to explore it, but we're encouraging the local counties to try these opportunities so that we can make a case for taking these things statewide.
All right. Well, I think, as noted, we definitely could continue this conversation a lot longer, but I know we're at time. Want to be respectful of everyone's time. Andrew, Cord, thank you so much for joining us. Would you mind to share your presentation so we can circulate that to folks?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Fantastic.
And we will
Absolutely.
upload this recording to YouTube and definitely chat about like a lunch potentially outing to visit you all for, you know, an in-person meeting of this group, maybe for 2025. And Melissa, you can join us via Zoom, unless you want to come to.
Fantastic.
We'll mail you a sandwich.
Yeah, and the milk carton too. That was the part.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great rest of
Take
your day.
care.
Stay well.